Why are you here at this very moment, searching for answers to a question that tears at the fabric of your soul? Why does God allow bad things to happen? This isn't just some philosophical question floating around in academic debates. No. This is the question that keeps you awake on the darkest nights, when the silence amplifies the echo of your pain and the darkness seems to swallow any trace of hope. It's the question that wells up from the depths of your being when you witness injustice, when you feel the weight of betrayal, when you see good people suffering while others thrive in wickedness. You are not alone in this agonizing search. Every human being who has ever breathed on this planet has, at some point, grappled with this existential dilemma that shakes the foundations of faith. Since the dawn of humanity, men and women have knelt before the divine mystery, questioning why the Creator of the universe allows his creatures to traverse such deep valleys of suffering. It's a question as old as Job, who lost everything in a single day and yet sought to understand God's ways. It's as universal as David's tears in the Psalms when he cried out for justice amidst persecution. It's as real as Christ's cry on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Your pain is valid. Your confusion is legitimate. Your struggle to reconcile God's goodness with the reality of evil is not a sign of spiritual weakness or lack of faith. It is, in fact, evidence that your soul still pulsates with life, that your heart still yearns for justice and meaning. Millions of people around the world at this very instant share this same anguish. Parents who have lost young children, spouses who have been betrayed after decades of devotion, honest workers who have seen their jobs disappear without explanation, good people facing devastating illnesses while those who cause harm seem immune to the consequences of their actions. Billy Graham, the renowned evangelist who touched millions of hearts worldwide, faced this same question countless times. In his sermons, in his books, in his most intimate moments of prayer, he wrestled to understand and explain how a God of infinite love could allow his creatures to undergo such severe trials. Graham didn't offer superficial answers or empty religious cliches. He delved deep into the divine mystery, acknowledging that some aspects of God's ways remain veiled to human eyes, but that we can still find light and hope even in the darkest night. This isn't merely an intellectual battle you're waging. It's a spiritual war unfolding in the deepest dimensions of your existence. It's the clash between faith and doubt, between hope and despair, between trust in a larger divine plan, and the feeling of abandonment in a seemingly chaotic universe. It's the struggle between your spirit, which yearns for connection with the divine, and your mind, which demands logical explanations for experiences that transcend human understanding. The Apostle Paul spoke of this battle when he wrote that, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." Your struggle with this question is part of a larger cosmic conflict, where forces of light and darkness clash not only on the physical plane, but in the spiritual dimensions that permeate all of existence. You are not simply trying to solve an intellectual puzzle. You are being refined by God himself, molded through the pressures and tensions of life into a spiritual masterpiece that reflects his glory. Like a diamond formed deep within the earth under intense pressure and heat, your soul is being transformed through the adversity you face. Every unanswered question, every sleepless night questioning God's ways, every moment of apparent celestial silence in the face of your cries, are elements of the spiritual refining process that God uses to shape your character and deepen your faith. The first reason why God allows bad things to happen lies in the mystery of free will that he granted to humanity. From the Garden of Eden, when he offered Adam and Eve the choice between obedience and rebellion, God established a fundamental Principle: true love can only exist where there is freedom of choice. A robot programmed to say "I love you" doesn't offer genuine love. It merely executes commands. Similarly, God desired children who would choose Him freely, not servants obligated to obey without alternative. This freedom, however, carries with it the terrible possibility of evil. When God created beings with the capacity for moral choice, He knew that some would choose the path of light, while others would turn to darkness. Every act of cruelty you witness, every injustice that revolts you, every instance of corruption that shakes your faith in humanity is a consequence of this freedom that God, in His infinite wisdom, chose to preserve. He could have created a world where evil was impossible, but that would also mean eliminating the possibility of authentic love, genuine goodness, and true faith. Think of the difference between a carefully controlled garden in a greenhouse and a wild forest. In the greenhouse, every element is regulated: temperature, humidity, light, nutrients. There are no pests, no storms, no unpleasant surprises. But there is also no wild magnificence of the forest, where life flourishes amidst challenges, where beauty emerges from the struggle for survival, where every tree that grows tall and strong does so because it has overcome storms, droughts, and competition. God chose to create a spiritual forest, not a moral greenhouse, because He knew that only in genuine freedom could the authentic beauty of love, faith, and virtue arise. When you see someone using their freedom to inflict pain, when you witness choices that shatter lives and families, when you observe leaders abusing their power to oppress the vulnerable, you are seeing the price God chose to pay to preserve. The possibility of true love. It's a steep price, one that cost the Heavenly Father the life of His only Son, but it's also the foundation upon which all genuine virtue can flourish. Every act of kindness you perform, every gesture of love you offer, every moment of faith you demonstrate only has profound meaning because you could have chosen the opposite. The second reason suffering permeates the human experience is intimately tied to the transformative character of adversity. Like a goldsmith who uses fire to purify gold, separating the precious metal from impurities, God often allows the flames of trials to refine our souls, burning away what is superficial and strengthening what is eternal. This is a truth that Billy Graham discovered personally in his own moments of difficulty, when health issues, public criticism, and ministerial challenges led him to seek God's face more deeply. Trials reveal who we truly are beneath the social masks we wear daily. When everything is going well, it's easy to maintain a facade of spirituality, kindness, and self-control. But when the storm hits, when the pressure mounts, when we are tested beyond our apparent limits, our true nature emerges. It is in these moments that we discover reservoirs of strength we didn't know we possessed, or confront weaknesses we'd rather ignore. Consider how coal transforms into a diamond. It's not a gentle or comfortable process. It requires immense pressure and intense heat sustained over long periods. Similarly, life's pressures, unexpected losses, profound disappointments, challenges that seem impossible to overcome, are often the instruments God uses to transform us from spiritual coal into diamonds of faith. Every tear shed in prayer, every sleepless night questioning His plan, every moment we choose to trust, despite the pain, are part of the transformative process that draws us closer to the image of Christ. This transformation doesn't happen only individually, but also within relationships and communities. Notice how families unite in times of crisis, how strangers become friends in times of disaster, how genuine compassion blossoms when we witness the suffering of others. The same fire that can destroy can also purify and unite. Adversity has the unique power to break down artificial barriers between people, dissolving prejudice and pride to reveal our shared humanity. Many of the most admirable qualities you See in others deep compassion, genuine humility, unwavering faith, the capacity to forgive, were forged in the furnace of adversity. The person who has never suffered may be pleasant, but rarely develops the emotional and spiritual depth of one who has walked through the valley of the shadow of death and emerged with a richer understanding of God's grace. This is why we often feel more comfortable seeking counsel from those who have faced similar struggles, knowing their words carry the weight of lived experience. The third reason Billy Graham frequently pointed to for the existence of suffering in God's plan relates to the development of spiritual dependence and genuine faith. In times of abundance and ease, it's natural for humans to develop an illusion of self-sufficiency. When everything is working perfectly, health is good, finances are stable, relationships flow harmoniously, we tend to forget our fundamental need for God. It's as if we walk through life under our own power, making decisions based solely on our limited wisdom, building our security on foundations that seem solid but are temporary. Suffering has the unique ability to reveal the fragility of our human constructs and remind us of our absolute dependence on the divine. When a medical diagnosis shatters our certainties about the future, when financial loss overturns our carefully laid plans, when the end of a significant relationship fragments our identity, we are forced to confront the reality that much of what we considered secure was, in fact, transient. It is precisely in these moments of vulnerability that our faith can grow most significantly. Faith developed in times of comfort is often superficial, based more on gratitude for blessings received than on deep trust in God's character. But the faith that emerges or strengthens amidst the storms is a tested faith, refined, rooted not in favorable circumstances, but in the unchanging nature of God himself. Think of Abraham, called the father of faith, not because of the easy moments of his journey, but because of his willingness to trust God even when he was called to sacrifice his promised son. Consider Job, whose name has become synonymous with patience and perseverance, not because his life was problem-free, but because he maintained his faith in God, even when he lost everything he held dear. Reflect on Paul, whose deepest writings on grace and divine power were produced in prisons and amidst persecution. These giants of faith did not develop their trust in God despite suffering, but through it. Their trials became stepping stones to higher levels of intimacy with the divine. They learned to find God not only in moments of celebration, but especially in the darkest valleys, discovering that his presence is more real and his love more tangible when all other sources of security fail. When you find yourself in circumstances that force you to depend completely on divine grace, when your own strength runs out, when your wisdom proves insufficient, when your resources become inadequate, you are being invited to experience a level of intimacy with God that wouldn't be possible in times of abundance. It is in our moments of greatest need that we discover he truly is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. The fourth profound reason why God allows adversity in our lives connects to the eternal purpose he has for each of us, and for humanity as a whole. Billy Graham often emphasized that our earthly existence, however significant, is just one chapter in a much larger story that extends into eternity. The difficulties we face here aren't random events or arbitrary punishments, but carefully permitted elements within a divine plan that transcends our limited understanding and our restricted temporal perspective. Imagine a complex tapestry being created by a master craftsman. When you look at the back of the fabric, you see only a confusing tangle of different colored threads, seemingly random knots, patterns that make no sense. But when you turn the tapestry over and look at the front, a beautiful image is revealed, where each thread has its perfect place, where each color contributes to the harmony of the whole, where even the elements that seemed out of place prove essential to the final composition. Our lives are often like looking at the tapestry from the wrong side. We see events that seem disconnected, suffering that makes no sense, injustices that contradict our understanding of divine goodness. But God is working on the right side of the tapestry, creating a masterpiece that will only be fully revealed when our limited perspective is expanded by eternity. Every pain you face, every loss that breaks you, every challenge that forces you to grow, are colored threads in the hands of the great craftsman, contributing to a pattern of beauty that transcends your current capacity for understanding. This perspective doesn't minimize the present reality of your suffering, but offers a context that can sustain you when pain threatens to destroy your hope. Paul expressed this truth when he wrote that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. He wasn't saying that suffering isn't real or painful, but that there is a larger dimension of reality where every tear shed in faith contributes to an eternal glory that will make all earthly pains seem like labor pains, intense in the moment, but forgotten in the joy of what they produce. Consider also how your personal trials often become instruments of ministry and healing for other people. The mother who loses a child and then dedicates her life to comforting other grieving parents. The recovering addict who becomes a counselor for those still trapped in addiction. The executive who loses everything financially and then helps others rebuild their lives after bankruptcies. Your wounds, when allowed to heal properly, often become sources of strength and wisdom that can bring light to the darkness of other people's lives. God doesn't waste pain. Every tear you shed in his presence, every prayer whispered in anguish, every moment you choose to trust when everything seems to go wrong are being woven into a tapestry of purpose that will extend far beyond the limits of your earthly life. People you will never meet may be touched by the strength you develop facing your current adversities. Future generations may be blessed by the character that is being forged in you through the pressures that now seem unbearable. The fifth and perhaps most profound reason why God allows suffering is related to the nature of divine love itself and his desire to share both his glory and his compassion with humanity. This is a truth that Billy Graham discovered throughout decades of ministry. God is not distant or indifferent to our suffering. On the contrary, he chose to enter fully into the human experience of pain through the incarnation of his Son Jesus Christ. When we look at the cross, we see not a God who inflicts suffering from a safe distance, but a God who willingly embraces the most extreme form of pain, physical, emotional, and spiritual, to demonstrate both his love and his understanding of the human condition. Jesus wasn't merely an observer of the human experience. He became a full participant, experiencing betrayal by close friends, abandonment in times of greatest need, injustice at the hands of corrupt systems, and even the feeling of separation from the Heavenly Father. This reality completely transforms our understanding of suffering. We are not serving a God who has never experienced pain, but a God who chose to intimately know every kind of anguish we can face. When you cry because of betrayal, Jesus understands, because he was betrayed by Judas. When you feel abandoned by those you trusted, Jesus understands, because he was denied by Peter and abandoned by the disciples. When you face injustice, Jesus understands, because he was unjustly condemned for crimes he did not commit. More than that, his experience of suffering wasn't just an example of endurance, but the means through which he opened a path for all human pain to be redeemed and transformed. The cross wasn't just a symbol of his love, but the mechanism through which he can take our deepest wounds and transform them into sources of healing, both for ourselves and for others who are suffering. This perspective of co-participation in the suffering of Christ offers a completely new dimension to facing adversity. Paul spoke of completing in his body what is lacking in Christ's afflictions. This doesn't mean that Jesus' sacrifice was insufficient for salvation, but that there is a dimension of divine ministry in the world that continues through those who choose to allow their own pains to become instruments of compassion and healing for others. When you offer your tears to God, not just the joyful ones, but especially the bitter ones, they become part of a river of mercy that flows through history to touch lives that need hope. Your prayers amidst this anguish join the chorus of God's children throughout the ages, creating a symphony of faith that resonates through spiritual dimensions and moves the heart of God Himself. Consider how some of the most powerful expressions of faith and worship were born precisely in the darkest moments of the human experience. The most poignant psalms were penned by David in caves, fleeing from enemies. The most comforting hymns were composed by those experiencing devastating loss. The deepest prayers were whispered from lips trembling with pain. Your current suffering may be preparing you to become an instrument of comfort and hope in ways you cannot yet imagine. There is also a mysterious dimension where our trials draw us closer to God's heart in a unique way. Just as parents often feel a special tenderness for children who have endured greater hardship, there's a particular intimacy that develops between us and God when we walk through the deepest valleys, trusting in His goodness. It's not that He loves those whose journey has been easier any less, but there is a depth of relationship that can only be developed through the dependence forged in suffering. This intimacy isn't masochistic or unhealthy. It's the intimacy of the soldier who fought alongside their commander in the most dangerous trenches, of the child who remained loyal to their parent even when they didn't understand all their decisions, of the wife who continued to love her husband through the toughest seasons of marriage. It's an intimacy based not only on shared pleasure, but on trust tested and proven through adversity. When you look back on your life, you'll likely find that your moments of greatest spiritual growth didn't come during periods of ease, but during times when you were forced to seek God with an intensity that wouldn't be necessary under normal circumstances. The most memorable answered prayers, the most miraculous provisions, the clearest manifestations of divine love often occurred precisely when you needed them most, in moments of greatest vulnerability and need. Billy Graham observed throughout his life that some of the most radiant and spiritually mature people he knew were those who had endured the severest trials. Not people embittered or broken by hardship, but individuals who had allowed their pain to become stepping stones to higher levels of faith, compassion, and wisdom. They possessed a quality of hope that couldn't be easily shaken because it had been tested in the fires of adversity and proven genuine. As you contemplate these profound truths about why God allows bad things to happen, it's important to recognize that perfectly understanding God's ways isn't the ultimate goal of our seeking. The goal is to develop a trust that transcends complete understanding, a faith that can embrace mystery without being paralyzed by it, a love that chooses to trust even when it cannot see the whole picture. This journey of faith amidst hardship isn't a path you're meant to travel alone. God never intended for us to face our struggles in isolation. He gave us His word as a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. He gave us His Spirit as comforter and counselor and source of supernatural strength. He gave us the community of faith, fellow travelers who can offer encouragement, wisdom, and practical support when our own strength fails. Most importantly, He gave us the promise of His constant presence, even when you can't feel His nearness, even when His ways seem too mysterious to understand, even when the answers to your prayers seem delayed or different than you expected. The truth remains unchanged. You are not abandoned. The same God who numbered the hairs on your head, who knows every thought before it forms in your mind, who has collected every tear you've shed. This God is present in every moment of your journey working all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. The hope that Billy Graham offered to the multitudes who heard him wasn't a hope based on the promise that life would be easy for those who followed Christ. It was a hope grounded in the certainty that no suffering would be wasted in the hands of a God who can transform even the greatest tragedies into instruments of his glory and our growth. It was the hope that our story doesn't end with the hardships of this life, but extends through eternity, where every tear will be wiped away and every question answered in the full light of his presence. This hope doesn't deny the present reality of pain, but offers a context that can sustain you when pain threatens to destroy your faith. It acknowledges that there are some aspects of God's ways that will remain mysterious until we can see him face to face, but affirms that what we can know of his character, his infinite love, his perfect justice, his boundless wisdom, is enough to anchor our trust even in the severest storms. Remember that faith isn't the absence of questions, but the choice to trust despite unanswered questions. It's possible to carry both a genuine question and a deep trust in the same heart. You can honestly say, "I don't understand why this is happening," and simultaneously declare, "But I choose to trust that God is in control and that his ways are higher than mine." The great biblical figures we admire weren't people who never questioned or struggled with doubt. They were people who brought their honest questions before God, who wrestled with him as Jacob wrestled with the angel, who poured out their hearts in his presence without pretense or religious masks. In this honest struggle, they discovered that God is big enough to handle our questions, strong enough to sustain our doubts, and loving enough to meet us in the midst of our deepest struggles. The life God offers isn't a problem-free life, but a life where problems can become stepping stones to higher levels of intimacy with him. It's a life where your deepest wounds can become sources of your greatest strength, where your most devastating losses can transform into your most powerful ministries, where your darkest nights can produce your most beautiful songs. When you find yourself again questioning why God allows bad things to happen, and you probably will, because this is a question that resurfaces with each new season of difficulty, remember that this question itself is evidence that your heart still yearns for justice, truth, and meaning. It's proof that you haven't resigned yourself to cynicism or indifference. It's a sign that your soul is still alive and seeking connection with the divine. Allow this seeking to lead you not away from God, but deeper into his presence. Use your questions as bridges to greater intimacy with the one who understands every aspect of your struggle, because he himself experienced every form of human suffering. Let your tears become prayers, your confusion transform into a more intense seeking of his face, your pain be molded into a more compassionate heart towards others who are hurting. And always remember that your story doesn't end with the present suffering. The most beautiful pages of your life may still be unwritten. The chapters of greatest joy, growth, and purpose may be waiting just beyond your current difficulties. The same God who allowed you to face this season of difficult questions is the God who can use even these experiences to write a story of redemption, restoration, and victory that will be a testament to his goodness for generations to come. As you continue on this journey of faith, carrying your honest questions and your growing trust, may you discover that the mystery of God's ways is not an obstacle to faith, but an invitation to a deeper spiritual adventure. May you find his presence not only in moments of clarity, but especially in moments of confusion. And may you emerge from this season of questioning not with all the answers you sought, but with something even more valuable, a tested and proven trust in the character of the one who is worthy of all trust, even when his ways remain beyond our complete understanding.